The American forests have no stronger advocate than Janisse Ray. In her 3 books, Ecology of a Cracker Childhood, Wild Card Quilt, and Pinhook, she argues passionately for the remaining stands of old-growth forest and greater efforts on behalf of our soil, water, and air. I spoke with Janisse Ray in the Carmichael Library on the campus of the University of Montevallo. Well, Janisse, I am so glad you could take time and come in today to talk.
Thank you for having me.
I have read a lot of memoirs, and some of them, many of them are odd. I think of Harry Cruz's childhood, not so far from your home place, but I believe you're the only person that I've read about who was raised in a junkyard.
Well,
And it is the center of your first book, Ecology of a Cracker Childhood. The question, though, is how do we get from all those wrecked cars and spare parts to this passion for the natural world, which seems in many ways at least different, if not opposite? How did it happen?
that's a question I've thought about a lot, and I don't really know the answer, Don. I think that it has to do with what I didn't have as a child, that I gravitated toward that. So in some ways, because my childhood was what would the word be? It was so, it was hard to understand. My childhood was inexplicable to me as a child. And I think I went to the places where I found comfort and safety. Not that I wasn't surrounded by love, I was. But there was a lot of confusion and chaos, especially psychic and emotional.
Your home, it's very clear in your memoir, your first book, that your mom and dad really loved you, and they loved all their children and each other. They're absolutely dedicated literally through sickness and health and thick and thin and poverty. But there's also this religion, this fervor that your father especially developed. Two things that struck me. One is that your religion, that you're just as fervent and passionate as he is, except you've switched over to longleaf pines and gopher tortoises instead of conventional Christianity. But to back up a bit, his faith, I didn't get it. I didn't. How do you characterize the religious system in which you were raised? It's Christian, I know, but it seemed a little bit off center.
My father has an intense need to understand the world philosophically, why we're on it, what our purpose is. And he has come as close as he's able to finding an answer for that. And it's not my answer, but it's his answer. I honor him having that answer. And beyond that, I don't have much explanation for it.
But it's very strict.
Very
ethically, morally.
Strict interpretation of the Bible.
Yeah.
Yes, apostolic faith. And so in many ways I was very isolated as a child in that religion. And I will agree with you that I have become a preacher in my own right, but there is a direct link between fervent environmentalism and that kind of fervent extremism in religion. Julia Butterfly Hill, for example, came from the kind of upbringing that I did, and it goes on and on. There are a lot of these environmental types.
Several people who have written about your first book talk about how the longleaf pine will never find a more eloquent spokesperson, defender. I'm not being facetious. I mean, literally, tell me, why should everybody care about that particular habitat, that particular kind of forest?
That's a brilliant question. So it's not that forest. It's that every forest, wherever you're from, is important. Tell me who you are. Tell me where you're from, and I'll tell you who you are, said Wallace Stegner. So it happens that my nativity began in the longleaf pine forest, and the longleaf pine forest is 99% gone. 99% of naturally regenerated stands were gone by 1995. So you could be from the Palouse Prairie or the Blue Stem Prairie. You could be from anywhere. And you have to look at what we're doing to the landscapes in this country. and that is we're obliterating them, destroying them, fragmenting them.
What is your response to, I think, well-meaning, sincere people who talk about tree farms, long rows of slash pines, as if they were forests? I mean, they're sort of not.
No, I hardly ever do a talk without saying, if you don't get anything else from it, get this: a tree farm, a pine plantation is never a forest. It's not a forest and never will be. Would never sit here and say I don't believe in the cutting of trees, because I do. I have books printed on trees. I live in a house made of heart pine from longleaf my great-grandparents grew. However, the way that we are cutting our forests is completely unsustainable, and there are great models of how we could do it better. In the end of Ecology, of A Cracker Childhood, you'll see a chapter about Leon Neal, the ecological forester, who he obtains a profit from these forests that he manages every year, and yet keeps the forest intact. So he does selective tree single tree selection, he calls it, selective tree cutting.
Yeah, that's really the trick, isn't it? Just not to clear cut.
I think every private owner should retain a portion of their land in natural forest, and every public landowner an even bigger portion, or every corporate landowner. I don't think that, well, I know we can't keep going with the wholesale destruction of our forests. Too much depends on it, including right now, Don, climate change. We talk about climate change being driven by fossil fuel emissions, methane production, and so forth, but it's equally driven by deforestation. Forests are the places where we sequester carbon dioxide, and when we cut them down, we release all that into the atmosphere.
And they cool the earth in their own way.
Yes.
Your childhood, filled with love and junk.
Love and Junk, that's a title for you.
In any case, when you finished high school, as I was reading along, this became clearer and clearer. This girl's going to fly. And you left, and it was 17 years. School in Dahlonega, school in Jacksonville, finally school in Montana, and then you returned seeking what you called community. You went back to, was it your grandmother's house? In Baxley.
My grandmother's house.
Now, I don't mean to seem impertinent, but am I right that you did not, in fact, find that community that you were seeking?
Well, I'm back in my grandmother's house again for the second time, and it's very difficult to find. It is. We found it. It's not in our immediate neighborhood. So in a wider geography, there are people who I think of as dear friends and family. A second family, so that's the answer to that. However, I will say that I do belong to the community that's in my immediate geography. It's just that I feel most comfortable among other kinds of people. So I can buy hay from my Uncle Bill who lives down the road, but it's not necessarily that he and I can have a conversation about the things that matter the most to me.
Yeah. I thought you had a quote in there from Barry Lopez, which I think maybe your son even, maybe it's even in Silas's mouth, but fundamentalism breeds a lack of imagination.
Barry Lopez.
Something like that.
Said it first.
Yeah.
Fundamentalism in any form is a sign of a failed imagination.
A failed imagination. And as I was reading, and I've been talking about your book with other people as well, you know, what do you think about this or that? And I think that you're talking about something like rural brain drain or rural imagination drain.
Yes. I got this idea first from Eugene Odom, who's the father of ecology. He and I were speaking at the University of Georgia one day before he died, and he was talking to me about when people leave, when the bright and best young people leave, they go off to college, to jobs, and they never come back, then it leaves rural America in shambles, ghost towns, and not simply financial poverty, but also cultural poverty. And that's what I find, that's what I'm finding. But I also believe, Don, that it spells a kind of doom for a place if we lose all the best and brightest people. And so what happens is that those rural places suffer more and more and more intensely.
How do we, I mean, you talk about the difficulty of moving back out into these situations. How do you earn a living? How do you reestablish any of these rural communities that we'd like to see thrive?
So the question is, how does one move back and earn a living?
Yeah, well, is this just hopeless? Or is there some system by which we can repopulate and reimagine small towns and country life?
I think it's already happening. I see it. I think the computer was the first tool that we had that allowed us to come back and DSL hookups in all these rural places and whatever else we need. But I see it already happening. And that's a lovely thing. Other signs are the rise of small organic farmers. Even here in rural Alabama and rural Georgia, it's happening. Farmers markets. This year is the first year that we've started a farmers market in our little town of Baxley, and so these are tiny signs. When you live in a place, I lived in Brattleboro, Vermont, which is very progressive, filled with well-educated people in general, and there everything is happening, and so I see these small signs of what we're starting as real hope and real change coming.
I'm kind of amused by the idea of the farmer's market at Baxley because my vision of the place is that every house has a big garden in the back of it. So when you take all the vegetables on Saturday morning, who buys them? You've all got tomatoes and onions.
You're not far off, but it's about 15 to 20 years back that happened. So now most of the people have come off the farm. They're working in whatever industry that they can find, factories, the nuclear plant near our house, and most people aren't growing gardens. But I would say probably 20% of our citizens still have gardens.
And are you a Chez Panisse fan?
Yes, and it rhymes with my name.
Chez Janisse. Local, seasonal.
Yes.
Yeah.
We are sustenance farmers ourselves, so we moved back to my grandmother's farm, and we have big gardens and all kinds of animals.
And you're a vegetarian?
No.
You're not a vegetarian?
No.
You used to be a vegetarian?
Yes.
Well, there's an anecdote, an incident in your, I think it's in Quilt, where you're called upon to judge a pork contest.
No.
And I liked it that you weighed the priorities there, and you decided that even though at the time you were a vegetarian.
I was.
And you would go ahead and be the judge of the pork contest because it was important. Why?
For my community. The librarian who I've known since I was a child, she took me around to all my 4-H meetings. She taught me to crochet. She asked me to judge the pork contest for the Farm Bureau. I couldn't say no.
Well,
so I did it.
If they make a movie of this, the actress will be standing there with her vegetarian face, putting hogshead cheese into it. You've given that up though, the vegetarianism.
Yes, I don't eat industrial meat, so I have to know where the meat came from. Or at least be told that it's free range, organic, natural, pasture fed.
Normally, when I get into a conversation about vegetarianism, I'm asking people why they do it. But here's an opportunity for me. Why did you stop doing it?
The environmental argument is that you use many fewer acres to produce corn and grain than you do to produce meat.
Right.
But my argument for it is that the longest lived societies on Earth eat pasture or grass-fed animals and also cultured milk products. And so I just started looking at who lived the longest, and unfortunately it's not vegetarians.
No. And I just don't believe in making lists of things one doesn't do anymore.
Yeah.
Anyway, it seems narrowing.
I like to make lists of things I still want to do.
Exactly.
I want to learn to ride a motorcycle.
Or a wider life, not a narrower life.
That's right.
When you went home after those 17 years away, by that time you were repairing your relationship to your mother and your father and coming to terms with the community. But the quilt then that your mother and you make together is, it's not obvious. Obvious is not a good word. It is a strong symbol of what you're up to. When you were working in the book, writing about the quilt, how did you want your reader to perceive this symbolically or emblematically?
As the metaphors of piecing back together a relationship, a life, a community. And because the quilt is historically so important in our culture, literally to keep you warm, that too, just reclaiming that history. And the relationship with my mother, though, was the main thing. My mother is truly an angel. You would just be amazed. I'm not.
Okay.
I know. I'm not lying when I say that.
No, I've read what you've written about your husband. So the fact that you think your mother is an angel doesn't surprise me. You think your husband is a miracle.
He is.
Oh, well, all right then.
You should meet him. He's terrific.
Well, I hope I do.
So that was it. I really wanted to spend time with my mother.
Yeah, and handwork shared breeds conversation, doesn't it?
Yes, it leaves the brain free to think, to talk. Yeah, it does. The old making sausage together.
Yeah.
Or everybody's shelling peas on the porch.
The whole business of, your life, in all three books, it's very clear that you lead an essentially simple life in the Thoreauvian sense of simplicity and economy. And I know that Walden has to have been an important book for you. Do you think of that consciously? Is Walden important to you? What are the lessons there?
Somebody advised me to read it when I was about 17 or 18, and it was pivotal in my life. It was definitely epiphanic, and he's still one of my great heroes.
Yeah.
He is. I'd like to sit and have a conversation with him like you and I are
absolutely. Having. Sit on two stumps. Well, I guess that wouldn't be so good, would it? He writes about the joy of going into the woods and sitting on a stump. But maybe it's a selectively cut stump. So all right.
What's interesting, Don, is the things that he was opposed to, which was kind of the rise of industrialism, is exactly at the core of my being what I'm opposed to. Yeah. So I really have a lot in common with the guy.
This is a big question, and I guess it can't be answered too simply, but do you feel that our government, the Bureau of the Indian Affairs, the Bureau of the Interior, the whole all the federal apparatus that has something to do with EPA, all of it, have they failed us? Should we be unhappy, or are they just doing the best they can? Or, how grumpy or not grumpy are you with the federal agencies who are supposed to be protecting the forests, the water?
I've not reconciled. I have not reconciled my thoughts about the government. It's, on one hand, I see some governmental agencies promoting one thing. For example, there are agencies promoting the return of longleaf, and on the other hand, agencies absolutely turning their heads and allowing the forest to be cut all the way through the streams, up to the roads. It doesn't matter, wholesale clear cutting. And it's that is schizophrenia to me. That within our government, I see a mental illness, that you would say one thing, or you would do one thing on one hand and another thing on the other hand, and those two things be irreconcilable. And that's all I want to say, that we are the government, but in actuality, I don't believe we are.
Well, I wish we were the government.
Yeah.
Your most recent book, Pinhook, is it's a much more narrowly focused book, and it's about I guess if I understood it right, it's about how islands of habitat and nature won't do. especially for mammals, especially for larger animals. They just won't do. And that, again, the metaphor here is somehow that things have to be joined together. Is that fair?
That's very fair. Yes, so I'm writing about this success story that Pinhook Swamp, which to the north is bounded by Okefenokee Swamp and to the south by Osceola National Forest, has been saved acre by acre. And now we have a wildlife corridor, if you will, in Georgia and Florida that's 750,000 acres in size. And I simply wrote the book to promote that the South can have success stories, environmental success stories. We have so many failures.
Oh, yeah.
But this is something that's working, a place where we can reintroduce the Florida panther. We can bring back whooping cranes. We can hopefully see ivory-bill woodpeckers there one day. It's a place of hope, because in that re-putting back together, we also get to put back together human society. Neighbors knowing one another, families not breaking up. Do you see?
I do. I was curious. I mean, every species that you talk about has a different need. I mean, if you build the road in exactly the wrong place, you can even mess up the salamander, apparently, who needs to cross the road. But some species need so many miles of uninterrupted habitat, or so many square miles.
Yeah, the black bear.
Black bear. How you mentioned in one of your books how far a bear can travel overnight?
Do you remember that
I think
figure?
you said 30 miles.
I don't remember.
I think so, and I thought, boy, that's a swift little bear moving 30 miles.
They have a huge territory.
What about roads? What about those roads?
Roads are great because their roads are how I got to you today.
Well,
but they cut through all kinds of places. We get more and more of them, and they get wider and wider. I heard the new initiative that the President Obama has for high-speed rail. And he actually said this, maybe it was today, if not, it was yesterday, that we're going to have to stop building wider and wider roads and think about other forms of transportation.
It's not even necessary to invent it. The Europeans and the Japanese have already done it. All we have to do is go look and see how it works.
That's right.
You have been amazingly productive over the last few years. I mean, you have an edited book of essays, a volume of poetry, 3 volumes of your own, and so I'm perfectly confident when I ask you, what's next? What are you working on now?
I feel so unproductive because, Dawn, I have about 10 times more ideas than I have time to work on. So I'm working on a book about seeds. And it's a little different for me. So it's a look at the story of seeds, of particular species of varieties of vegetables. And
including heirloom and non-hybrid.
It's really about heirloom seeds and the people who have kept them alive over the years. And so I get to travel around and meet these gardeners who've been keeping, Grandma Betty's beans that the preacher gave her when he left town, that she's been growing, and then family members have been growing. And it's a really fun book. I say, my major professor said, writing well is a matter of figuring out what obsesses you. And I'm obsessed by seeds, by the miracle of seeds, by the stories they tell. So that's what I'm working on.
When this book gets planted and grown and harvested, no, that's just not going to work. Anyway, I'm looking forward to it. When you finish it, I'll read it, and I hope we can sit down again and talk about it.
Thank you so much for your interest in my work and
thank you for being
your
here
great
today.
questions. It's been a nice conversation.